Alone in the dark, she discovered an incredible voice from the kitchen that transformed her life. Emily stood at the sink, her hands submerged in the lukewarm water, scrubbing the last remnants of dinner off a plate. Her mind was a whirlpool of worries. Rent due, groceries unpaid, the endless cycle of her existence. Each plate felt heavier than the last, like the weight of the world pressing down upon her shoulders. She was a single mother, thrust into the relentless grind of 2 jobs to keep herself and her rambunctious 10-year-old son, Max, afloat. Did it really come to this? The laughter from another room echoed in her thoughts, then faded into silence. The drudgery stifled her, trapping her dreams in the dusty corners of her heart. She'd once harbored aspirations of singing, but self-doubt consumed that spark long ago. Now there was only monotony, a rhythm of exhaustion that sapped her spirit under the same peeling wallpaper of her inherited home. And on this dreary evening, as she rinsed off the last fork, a mysterious twinkle caught her attention. A voice, melodic and ethereal, drifted in through the window, pulling her closer to the edge of that neglected part of herself. Who could it be? She hesitated, glancing at Max, slumbering peacefully on the couch. The spell was undeniable, rooting her feet to the kitchen floor. But the voice called out like a lifebuoy in turbulent seas, whispering promises of forgotten warmth. She took a step toward the door, her heart racing. The enchanting song drew her out into the cool night air, her breaths growing deeper with each stride toward the quaint church down the street. Inside, Emily found Mrs. Jenkins, a retired music teacher, and a small crowd of townsfolk gathered in a circle, singing songs that echoed with nostalgia. A warmth enveloped Emily, washing over her like a tidal wave of recognition and familiar longing. She watched as Mrs. Jenkins guided the group, her eyes alive with a passion that Emily remembered once possessing. The desire to connect, to reclaim the echoes that lived in her soul, surged within her. But the doubts crept back in, snaking around her heart like ivy strangling a tree. Would she ever be anything more than just a mother struggling to survive? What was it to dream, when the weight of failure loomed just beyond every corner? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she stood there, consumed by an internal tempest, fears of jealousy and betrayal began to swirl into view. The whispers of the townsfolk echoed in her ears, sowing seeds of uncertainty. Just days into the build-up of a local scholarship competition, the gravitational pull of community rivalry and the biting pangs of envy intertwined with her own insecurities. Friendships blossomed into resentments as old acquaintances sided against her. What if she failed? What if the very dreams she dared to beach on that ethereal voice were pulled out from under her like a rug, unveiling vulnerabilities that seemed to compound daily? Emily's muscles tensed, each breath more difficult, her eyes scanning the room filled with expectant faces. What if she took the stage and fell silent? A drenching flood of anguish settled in her stomach, knotting her insides. Standing backstage, teetering between dreams and despair, she found solace in that flickering voice. Could she hold on to it long enough to break the chains? Her mind screamed for clarity as uncertainty tightened its grip tighter still. Moments away from a chance at destiny, the question loomed. Could she rise above the chaos? Or would the silence swallow her whole? As the murmur of voices faded and silence enveloped Emily, she stood frozen in the dim light of the backstage area. Her pulse roared in her ears, drowning out every rational thought. The room felt claustrophobic, the air thick with tension. Each breath weighed like a stone, pressing down on her ribs. Somewhere beyond the curtain, the crowd waited, unaware of the turmoil tearing at her insides. The flickering voice that had drawn her from her kitchen felt like a distant memory now, smothered by the unrelenting voices of doubt. Those internal critics who scoffed at her ambition, reminding her of every moment she had faltered. Gripped by the fear of failure, she was haunted by the ridicule of familiar faces, their disapproving gazes promising to cut deeper than any words. What if they were right? What if this dream was merely a delusion, a cruel joke played by her own hopeful heart? A light tap on her shoulder broke the cycle of negativity. It was Mrs. Jenkins, her eyes filled with kindness, yet laced with an urgency that compelled Emily to refocus. Emily, this is your moment. You have a gift, and it's time you share it. Remember, the audience is rooting for you. There was a genuine warmth in Mrs. Jenkins' voice, tipping the scale between despair and determination. Emily felt a spark within her, a flicker of the passion she had buried for so long. Could she really step into that light? Could her voice, once suffocated by fear, break free and fill the empty spaces in her heart? Suddenly she felt a tug at her sleeve. It was Max, wide-eyed and vibrantly awake now, having woken up from his earlier slumber. "Mom, are you going to sing? You can do it. I believe in you." His unwavering trust and excitement sent a surge of adrenaline through her veins. With each passing second, she wrestled with the overwhelming urge to retreat into the shadows versus the longing to emerge, to be seen, to be heard. She could either let this moment pass, ensuring the mundane continued to flow in its monotonous cadence, or take a leap, risking everything for something that had once felt vital to her soul. In that instant, a decision began to solidify within her. Emily remembered her childhood, the nights spent dreaming of stages and spotlights, the musical notes illuminating her path like stars. The pain of underachievement behind her turned into a drive for purpose. The winding road ahead seemed treacherous, full of fears and uncertainties, yet she could see a glimpse of potential shimmering at its end. A promise of fulfillment, of reclaiming the woman she once was. A deep breath steadied her trembling hands as she stepped closer to the curtain. She could hear the gentle, labored breaths from the audience, the fabric of shared anticipation thickening. This was not merely a competition. This was a reclaiming of her narrative. "I'm not just a mother," she whispered to herself. "I am Emily, and I can sing." Just as she was about to step into the light, an old acquaintance, rival and competitor, emerged from the shadows, a smug expression etched on her face. "Shouldn't you be home with your son, instead of risking embarrassment here?" The cutting remark ricocheted around the confines of Emily's mind, igniting the embers of self-doubt once more. In that moment, facing her nemesis, she felt the tumult within her swell. Would she let this shadow of negativity snuff the light she was about to reclaim? The moment felt electric, the air crackling with potential. It wasn't just a competition, it was a confrontation with herself, her past, and her dreams. As her heart thudded louder than the discordant thoughts, Emily realized she had to act. The time had come to face the fears that had long since clouded her perspective, to silence the doubts that had coiled too tightly around her aspirations. Would she rise to the occasion and seize the moment, or would she let fear shatter her dreams once more? With every ounce of determination, she pushed aside the voice echoing disdain. She stepped forward, into uncertainty, poised to discover if the courage within could echo louder than the regrets of her past. The moment Emily stepped into the light, the warmth enveloped her like a familiar embrace, igniting a sense of purpose that surged through her veins. The audience's faces emerged from the haze, each gaze brimming with anticipation. She could see the kindness in their expressions, mingling with the hope they held for her, a stark contrast to the judgments that had plagued her thoughts just moments before. A wave of confidence washed over her, banishing the shadows of self-doubt. This was not merely a performance, it was a declaration of her identity. Taking a deep breath, she let the music swirl around her, gathering strength from her recollections of past dreams. Emily had envisioned this moment countless times as a child, and now it promised more than mere notes and melodies. She began to sing, each note spilling forth like a stream breaking through a dam, flowing freely with emotion. The words were a part of her, stirring memories of laughter and joy that had long been overshadowed by years of hesitation. With every phrase, she felt the audience connect with her, a shared understanding of struggle and resilience, painting the air with a palette of emotions. As the song crescendoed, she caught a glimpse of Max in the front row, his small face aglow with pride and joy. His infectious enthusiasm propelled her forward. Suddenly the fear of ridicule vanished, leaving behind a fierce resolve. She was embodying her aspirations, the very essence of her identity, and the exhilaration that came with it was intoxicating. In the heart of her performance, her rival's earlier taunt drifted to the periphery of her mind, a distant echo drowned out by the music. What if she faltered? Most certainly, the specters of her past failures slinked in the background, whispering half-formed criticisms. Yet as she held her final note, she realized that even the specter of her past could not overshadow her present strength. When the last note faded into the charged silence, the applause burst forth like a tidal wave, enveloping her in acceptance and appreciation. She closed her eyes, soaking in the moment, and a smile bloomed on her face. The fears that had once threatened to snuff her passion now felt like mere shadows, remnants of a life spent hiding. But as she stepped off the stage, exhilaration coursing through her, reality pressed in once more. There was an undeniable sense of vulnerability that lingered beneath her triumph. For every cheer she had received, she was acutely aware that she would soon face unsparing criticisms, especially from those who saw her ambition as foolishness. With Max's hand firmly nestled in hers, her heart ached with the realization that this victory was only the beginning. She had exposed herself to a world that could both celebrate and condemn her aspirations. The essence of who she was and who she could become danced on the edge of uncertainty, leaving her both inspired and terrified of the commitment she had made to her own dreams. As they exited the venue, Max tugged at her hand, beaming with joy. "You were amazing, Mom. When can we do that again?" His innocent enthusiasm felt like a guiding light through the shadows that still threatened her resolve. But what did doing that again even mean? Was this fleeting moment enough to define her path, or did it signify a deeper pursuit of her own identity, separate from motherhood? Emily paused at the door, her thoughts pulling in different directions. This was about more than the stage. It was about personal growth, about exploring the hollows of her dreams that had been neglected for so long. She had taken a leap, but could she sustain the momentum? The night held the promise of more than applause. It whispered of new challenges, of questions that demanded answers. How would she navigate a life filled with creative pursuits while balancing her responsibilities as a mother? And, deep down, she knew the hardest battle was yet to come. "Tomorrow," she thought with steely determination, "I will begin finding the balance." With that resolve blooming within her, Emily stepped out into the night, ready to confront her future. Little did she know, another surprise awaited her beyond the horizon, one that would test not just her talents, but the depths of her courage as well. Emily awoke to the sun filtering through her curtains, casting warm hues across her room. The reality of her performance still echoed in her mind, yet with the dawn came a jolt of anxiety. It wasn't merely a feeling, it was a full-bodied sensation, almost tangible. Today was pivotal. She had to translate that on-stage moment into a sustainable pursuit of her identity. But how? As she prepared breakfast, the familiar rhythm of cooking began to soothe her. The crisp sound of bacon sizzling was a reminder of home, the grounds of her comfort zone. And yet, an underlying question nagged at her. Was making breakfast for Max purely fulfilling, or was she falling back into old habits, letting her identity as just a mother color her every moment? Max bounded into the kitchen, his energy infectious. "What can we do today, Mom?" he chirped, eyes wide and brimming with anticipation. His eagerness stirred something inside Emily, a sense of urgency to channel that ambition she had felt on stage, to engage both herself and her son in activities that didn't revolve solely around his needs. "Maybe we can do a project together," she suggested, yielding to a spontaneous idea. "What if we explore music together? Something creative?" There was a spark of excitement in Max's expression, his young mind already racing with possibilities. As they talked about the kinds of sounds they could create together, Emily felt a thrill build. The idea of exploring music outside herself and sharing it with Max filled her with purpose. This wasn't just about performance, it was a journey they could undertake together. However, the further they entertained the idea, the more Emily wrestled with her doubts. She had a wealth of creativity inside her, but had refrained from pursuing it, often with excuses rooted in practicality. She had relegated her own dreams to mere whispers in the background. Today, though, she had tasted what it felt like to step into her identity, and now confronted the gap between aspiration and reality. Fueled by a newfound resolve, Emily encouraged Max to explore music beyond just listening. They spent hours improvising with old instruments, creating bizarre concoctions of sound that filled their home with laughter. Yet each joyful noise she made felt as if it were ensnaring her deeper into this quest. This required dedication. A stop at the local music shop after lunch solidified her commitment. The cheerful bell jingled behind them as they entered, the walls lined with colorful guitars, percussion instruments, and a glossary of musical sheet. Emily's fingers brushed against a ukulele, and without thinking she reached for it. It was light, friendly, inviting. "What do you think of this one, Mom?" Max asked, his innocent scrutiny both supportive and challenging. "It's perfect," she said, buoyed by the laughter in her voice as she strummed a tentative chord. With each note, a fresh wave of confidence rippled through her, creating a renewed sense of purpose. But as she stood up to leave, the weight of fear settled back in. Would she be able to truly balance this new path? Would the coming critiques drown out this budding passion? That evening, as she reviewed her day, Small flickers of hope clouded her thoughts. She realized the next step would require not just commitment, but the ability to confront those voices that had stifled her ambitions for too long. As she put Max to bed, his sleepy murmurs filling the air, she vowed to embrace this journey not just for herself, but for him too. It was more than just about song. It was about life, determination, and the pursuit of dreams. The following morning, a text from her rival's music group pinged her phone, a bold invitation tempting her to join an open mic night. A maelstrom of emotions surged within her. Was she ready to step into the arena again, to face both her potential and the judgments that came with it? That question lingered in her mind, hanging like a cord unresolved, as she pondered the leap she had to take. Would she rise to meet this challenge, or would her fears tie her to the past once more? Tomorrow would demand a decision. Were her aspirations worth the risk of exposure? And with that uncertainty brewing, she felt the unmistakable shadows of courage whispering at the edges of her consciousness, urging her forward. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, Emily found herself seated on the faded couch, the ukulele resting on her lap like an uncharted territory waiting to be explored. She strummed absent-mindedly, the sound reverberating softly through the living room. Each note was a thread connecting her to a version of herself she had almost forgotten, one brimming with creativity and self-assurance. But this moment of inspiration was laced with unease. The invitation for the open mic night loomed in her mind like a shadow, demanding to be confronted. Each attempt to play a simple melody pulled at her heartstrings, evoking both nostalgia and trepidation. Memories of past performances flickered in her mind, the joys of applause mingling with the bitterness of rejection. Could she allow herself to step back into that world? Would her small triumphs at home be enough to withstand the pressure of a live audience, especially considering her previous shortcomings? In her gut, a primal fear wrestled with the thrill of possibility. She closed her eyes, envisioning herself at that open mic, standing behind the microphone, an image of bravery tangled with anxiety. What if she cracked? What if the never-ending critique of her abilities haunted her? A sudden, lively voice broke her thoughts. "Mom, let's sing that song we made." Max's voice, high-pitched and enthusiastic, was a stark contrast to her storm of emotions. The innocence of his excitement buoyed her spirit. How could she let fear overshadow the joy music brought to them both? "All right, buddy, let's do it," she exclaimed, a smile breaking through her hesitation. They began to create again, building not just a song but a memory, a childhood experience filled with laughter and creativity. As they sang, the initial uncertainty faded, replaced by a sense of camaraderie, of shared discovery. Emily witnessed Max's delight as he found his rhythm, his unfiltered expression a reminder of the purity of creativity. Yet even amidst their playful chaos, Emily's internal dialogue raged. Suddenly, a line from a song she once performed echoed in her mind. "The only way to silence your fears is to face them." Wasn't this open mic invitation a chance to express herself, to no longer remain hidden in the shadows? After their impromptu performance, as Max dashed off to grab more crayons, Emily took a deep breath and opened her phone to reread the message. The time had come to ascend from her comfort zone and into the spotlight. If not for herself, then for Max. For the promise of showing him that cultivating one's passion was both a struggle and a gift. Yet doubt still flickered at the corners of her courage. What if she wasn't good enough? What if old insecurities resurfaced? In the solitude of her thoughts, she hesitated again, the fork in the road painfully clear. Resolved to combat these inner demons, she began to draft her set list. The act of writing down her song choices felt like laying a foundation beneath her feet. Still, each title rekindled a flicker of panic. Lazily, she found herself idealizing her past, longing for the thrill of adoration, even as she winced at the taste of failure. That night, as Emily pulled the covers around her while Max slept soundly, she stared at the ceiling, wrestling with this decision. The dawn wasn't just another day. It was a potential turning point. Would she allow past fears to define her present? With a newfound resolve, she whispered into the darkness, "Tomorrow will be different." Little did she know, a greater challenge awaited her in the form of a text that would test not just her singing, but her ability to reclaim her identity from a past that still haunted her. As sleep slipped over her, the threshold of change loomed ominously, unyielding in its demand for action. What would emerge from the depths of her fears when she finally stepped up to that mic? Could she truly uncover an incredible voice that transformed her life? The following morning arrived with a clarity that felt almost tangible. The soft light of dawn spilling through the kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of the night's chaos. Emily stared at the breakfast dishes piled in the sink, a familiar sense of dread creeping in. There, beneath the surface of her mundane routine, lay an undercurrent of potential. As she wiped down the counter, her thoughts flickered like the sun's rays, bright and full of warmth, yet always just out of reach. Max bounded down the hallway, his laughter infectious as he slid into the kitchen like a burst of energy. "Mom, can I have pancakes?" he chirped, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Emily offered a smile, but the weight of her own internal conflict tightened around her. "Of course, buddy, let's whip them up," she replied, her voice carrying a mix of enthusiasm and distraction. As she gathered the ingredients, the ever-present whisper of the open mic night echoed in her mind. Today was the day, a moment that demanded her attention. Pancakes sizzled on the griddle, filling the room with the sweet aroma of batter and syrup. But instead of focusing on the culinary task at hand, her mind drifted to the music, the song she'd chosen, the trembling nerves that awaited her as a live audience would soon encircle her. Emily glanced at Max, who was now humming a tune, unaware of his mother's reservations. Inspired, she grabbed the ukulele resting against the wall. The familiar weight was reassuring, a tangible link to the creativity she longed to embrace. She began to strum softly, imbuing the kitchen with gentle notes that harmonized with Max's infectious enthusiasm. "Can I sing too?" Max asked, his innocent question a small dagger piercing through the wall of anxiety she had built around herself. She nodded, laughter bubbling in her chest as they created a spontaneous breakfast concert, the playful energy a balm for her soul. But as their laughter filled the air, dread began to wash over her again. What was this performance worth if she didn't allow herself to shine outside the comfort of their kitchen? The contrast between the euphoric bliss of creation and the paralyzing fear of exposure gnawed at her. After breakfast, with plates cleared away, Emily returned to writing her set list. Each word etched onto the page represented a decision, a small victory over her self-doubt. But even as her fingers danced across the paper, memories of critique and judgment loomed in the back of her mind. Suddenly her phone buzzed. It was a text from an old friend, inviting her to join a group chat for musicians looking to collaborate. The message struck a chord deep within, tugging at her ambitions. What if this group could propel her forward, instead of holding her in stagnation? Memories flooded back, both uplifting and painful, the heady feeling of singing in front of others coupled with the haunting failures of her past. As she pondered her options, Max's laughter rang out again, pulling her back into the present. Inspiration sparked within her, a moment of clarity rising above the noise of uncertainty. "All right, let's see what magic we can conjure today, Max," she declared, deciding then to embrace the unknown that had kept her stagnant for so long. Grabbing her phone, she opened the group chat, her heart racing with anticipation. Could she truly share herself once more, not only as a mother but as a musician rediscovering her identity? She hesitated for a fraction of a second before her finger hovered over the send button. The moment felt monumental, a decision crafted from courage. What would happen if she pressed it? Would this action be her first step towards reclaiming her passion, or would it open old wounds? With a deep breath, she finally pressed send, her resolve solidifying with the click of her screen. However, as the message vanished into the digital ether, an unexpected wave of vulnerability washed over her. A narrative was unfolding, but she had yet to confront the truths about herself. What if this path led to a confrontation with her past, a reunion with the doubts she had tried so hard to bury? Emily stood at a precipice, grappling with her intentions, her heart pounding in sync with the rhythm of her surroundings. The exhilaration of potential swirled within her, yet shadows of old fears trailed closely behind. Little did she know, a surprising reply awaited her, one that would challenge her resolve to rebuild her identity amidst the remnants of her fears. Emily paced the length of her living room, each step punctuating a growing tension in her chest. The message had been sent, yet unlike the thrill she anticipated, it was quickly replaced by a storm of anxiety. What if they remembered her? What if the echoes of judgment from earlier years rose up to engulf her once more? The sunlight, once a source of warmth, now felt like an interrogation light, harsh and revealing. Moments slid past as she replayed her hesitations and fears, the remnants of her insecurities creeping back in heavy waves. Uncertainty drowned her enthusiasm as she sank onto the couch, the fabric scratching against her skin like the thoughts racing through her mind. Her phone buzzed again, jolting her from introspection. A response. The casual tone was unexpected amidst her turmoil. "Hey, welcome aboard. Can't wait to hear what you've been working on. Let's set up a jam." Emily's breath hitched, Exhilaration and fear battled within her. The prospect of collaboration was thrilling, but it forced her to confront the weight of her past. Max's laughter drifted in from the kitchen, a stark contrast to her stormy thoughts. She rose to check on him, casting aside her clamor of doubts, if only for a moment. He was perched on a stool, tiny hands drawing sketches on a notepad, each line a declaration of pure imagination. Watching him, she felt a pang of recognition. His creativity radiated freedom, a freedom she had stifled in herself. "Can I sing with you tonight?" Max asked, his gaze unwavering. "Absolutely, buddy," she replied, though the words felt like a band-aid over her wound of insecurity. She'd wanted him to shine free of fear, to chase every melody with a fearless heart like his. As they shared a few spontaneous notes, Emily caught herself wondering, could she be the same? She wanted that sense of wisdom for him, yet here she was, retreating within her uncertainties. In a moment of intensity, she stepped back and turned her attention to the ukulele, the instrument grounding her as she began to play a gentle tune. The notes filled the air, and gradually the melancholy within her transformed into an ember of determination. It was a combination she often used to shift the weight of her anxiety into creativity. She'd faced unacceptable rejection before, but maybe this time would be different. Maybe the vulnerability she feared would, in fact, lead to rebirth. An idea sparked. A vision of what her music could achieve, the connection it could create, shot through her like lightning. If she leaned into this challenge instead of cowering away from it, wouldn't that be the legacy she wanted to build for Max? In that moment of clarity, Emily understood her path was not solely about her, but rather the reflection she offered to her son. She grabbed the notebook she had nearly forgotten, the pages scattered with countless half-sections and scribbled lyrics, contrasting the inhibitions that haunted her. She began to write anew, her mind racing, weaving together words into cohesive thoughts. Each line was now an acknowledgement of her journey, a blend of triumphs and insecurities. The very fears she sought to evade became fuel, shaping her narrative into something meaningful. Emily felt herself transforming, each strum accompanied by newfound courage, each lyric an assertion of her commitment to confront her identity. But as the words tumbled forth from her mind, she also felt an undeniable tension emerge. Like a predator lurking within her past, waiting for a moment to pounce. No longer could she rely on the comfort of the kitchen. Her artistic endeavors demanded she step into the world. With her heart racing, she peered into her phone to see if she could arrange a meeting. Yet beneath the surface of her eagerness lay the question that loomed large in her mind. Would her creativity withstand the scrutinizing gaze of her peers? The moment hung, heavy with uncertainty. As she prepared to reach out again, another notification flickered on her screen. A name from the past filling her with both hope and dread, someone who had always been both the critic and the catalyst for her music. Could this be the moment where she reclaimed what was lost, or would it spell turmoil she could no longer control? Emily stood on the edge of her resolve, ready to confront the very fabric of her artistic identity, her heart racing, her future hanging in the balance. The notification ping echoed in the silence, drawing Emily back from the precipice of uncertainty. The familiar name on her screen brought a rush of memories. Nina, the once untouchable star from school who had effortlessly ruled the music scene. Their history was a tapestry woven with admiration and heartbreak. Nina had been both muse and measure, inspiring yet intimidating. Each moment spent reflecting on that name sent her heart further into turmoil. With hesitant fingers, she tapped the message. "Let's meet up. I'm excited to hear what you've created." Temptation tugged at her. She could let this opportunity slip through her fingers or embrace it, face both the cringes of her past and the promise of her present. Gathering a newfound determination, she thought about Max. Could she allow herself to fall back into the shadows when he deserved to see her thrive? Emily took a deep breath, her pulse steadying for the first time. She responded with a tentative, "Sounds good. When and where?" The reply came before her anxiety could fully resurface. "How about tomorrow at the cafe? You'll be great." The validation sent a thread of warmth through her, igniting the embers of her earlier resolve. Suddenly it became clearer. This wasn't just about Emily reclaiming lost ground. It was about setting an example for Max, resilience over retreat, courage over fear. For too long she had been ensnared in her own web of self-doubt. Now she had to burst forth and show him what it meant to fight against one's internal demons. As the day wore on, she pulled out her notebook, her hands trembling with anticipation. A quiet resolve filled her as she worked on refining her lyrics, giving voice to her deepest insecurities, aspirations, and failures. She was eschewing pretense. This would be raw, honest, a mirror of her struggles. In the early evening glow, she found her way to the piano, her haven. The melody appeared unbidden, echoing through the empty home and resonating with her soul. Each note felt like an affirmation. She was here to stay, determined to confront her past and redefine her future. Max wandered in, his eyes glistening with excitement as he clapped cheerfully at the unfamiliar sounds. "Wow, what are you playing, Mommy?" "It's something new, just a song about being brave," she smiled, watching his face light up with pride. A revelation struck her. It wasn't just her voice she was finding, but also her purpose. She wanted to unleash a powerful message, one that resonated beyond personal catharsis. "What's brave mean?" he asked, tilting his head in his typical inquisitive way. "It means you do things that scare you, but you do them anyway," Emily replied, surprised at how easily the words flowed. In teaching him, she realized she was also teaching herself. Each explanation strengthened her resolve. With the clarity of her purpose forming, anxiety flashed anew, a stark contrast to earlier courage. But now, it was a familiar companion, urging her forward. Would she truly be able to endure meeting Nina and face the scrutiny of her past? What if the red ink of judgment splattered her new canvas, tainting her attempt for rebirth? The next morning came with the dawn of a new reality, one that was still fraught with uncertainties. As she sat in the cafe, the vibrant notes of conversation buzzed around her, drowning out her swirling thoughts. She spotted Nina at the entrance, confidence radiating from her posture. This was the moment to step into the light. Feeling her breath hitch, Emily's heart raced as choices loomed. Would she shrink back into the shadows of doubt, or step forward and embrace the new chapter waiting to unfold? The cafe door swung open wider, and for a fleeting moment, Emily saw another opportunity behind Nina's brilliant smile. A chance not only to reclaim, but to be vulnerable. With resolve solidifying, she made her choice. The moment of transformation was upon her, but with it, the looming question. Was she ready to let her voice be heard, despite the nagging memories of past failure? The battle between fear and courage had never felt more palpable as she stood, heart pounding, ready to step into the unknown. The moment Emily watched Nina walk into the cafe, a wave of nostalgia swept over her. What had once felt like a status play now exposed itself as a foundational experience. Nina, with her effortless charisma and dynamic presence, had often made Emily question her own worth. But now, standing at the precipice of their encounter, those memories transformed into a source of empowerment. As Nina approached her table, Emily braced herself, grounding her anxiety in the thought of Max's innocent belief in her. This wasn't merely a reunion, it was a chance to reclaim her narrative. She stood to greet Nina, her throat dry but her spine straightened. A bright smile graced Nina's lips, and for an instant, Emily's heart lightened. "Emily!" Nina exclaimed, wrapping her arms around her. The embrace was warm, yet filled with past layers of complexity. Emily responded, returning the hug with cautious enthusiasm. "I can't wait to hear what you've created." "Thanks for coming," Emily managed to reply, her voice steady. "I'm excited too." They settled at the table, the hum of the cafe mingling with the chatter of diners around them. Nina leaned forward, eyes sparkling with interest. "So tell me about the song. What inspired you?" For a moment, Emily faltered, facing the remnants of her insecurities. The ambient noise faded, leaving only the rhythmic thudding of her heart. But then she remembered her purpose, the lesson about bravery she had shared with Max. "It's about overcoming fear," she started slowly, the words solidifying her resolve. "I've been exploring a lot of my doubts, you know. I realized I want to express the journey of moving past them." Nina's expression shifted into one of genuine intrigue. "That's beautiful. Everyone struggles with fear, but not everyone has the courage to talk about it. Your voice matters. You've always had something special." The compliment sparked a flicker of confidence within Emily. Was it possible that Nina truly believed in her? This validation was more than a mere boost. It felt like an acknowledgement of her growth. Their conversation shifted fluidly, moving through questions about songwriting, their lives, and the inevitabilities of change. Emily felt herself relaxing, the tension easing with every shared laugh and nod. But as Nina shared her latest achievements, chart-topping songs and sold-out shows, a nagging doubt creeped back in. Emily couldn't shake the thought that she was on the verge of revealing something fragile and deeply personal. What if her creation wasn't good enough? What if it paled in comparison to Nina's polished success? The fear was a palpable force. Noticing Emily's withdrawal, Nina tilted her head. "Hey, What's going through your mind? Emily hesitated, but this was the crucible moment, an opportunity to confront her own narrative. I guess I'm worried that my music won't resonate. Every experience shapes your voice, Emily. You need to own that. There it was again, that belief that struck a chord within Emily. Nina reached across the table, her fingers brushing against Emily's. Your authenticity will shine through more than anything else ever will. Taking a deep breath, Emily realized this was a pivotal juncture. Nina wasn't merely an old friend, she represented both her past struggles and her potential future. What if it was time to break through the fear of judgment? She took another steadying breath as she pulled out her notebook from her bag. Can I share some of my lyrics with you? Nina's eyes lit up, a blend of anticipation and encouragement spilling from her expression. In that moment, Emily leaned into vulnerability, letting her fears take a back seat to her ambition. As she shared her most intimate thoughts, the cafe dissolved around them. It was just her and the music crafted from the depths of her soul. But the moment felt fleeting, with questions unanswered and insecurity lurking in the edges. How would Nina react? What if her art was criticized? It was now or never. Just as Emily prepared to unveil her first lyric, the doorway swung open, and the presence of an unexpected figure cast a long shadow over her confidence. The room chilled, her heart sank. This was someone from her past, someone who had once wielded judgment like a blade, and here they were again, ready to witness her moment of truth. Caught between her revelation and an impending crisis, Emily faced a stark choice. Would she let fear in, or stand tall against the tide of doubt, ready to share the essence of her renewed self? Emily stood at the crossroads of her fear and determination, the air thick with possibility. The moment before sharing her lyrics, with the weight of judgment looming just beyond her table, felt surreal. She looked up at Nina, her eyes reflecting the internal battle raging within her. Was it time to lay her truth bare? As she adjusted her grip on the notebook, she felt the tether of her past slip from her grasp. This is who I am, she thought resolutely. This is what I have to share. The presence of her old acquaintance from a time when criticism had stung so deeply could no longer dictate her worth. With newfound courage, she began to read her lyrics aloud, each word a testament to her journey through doubt, vulnerability, and resilience. She watched as Nina leaned in, her interest sincere, eyes sparkling with encouragement. Emily's voice, initially timid, grew stronger as she poured her heart into the verses. And I learned that fear is just a shadow, hiding truths I must face. Each line resonated with her commitment to reclaim her identity. When she finished, a profound silence enveloped their table. Emily's heart raced. The void felt heavier than before. Had she created something worth acknowledging, or was it merely the echo of an unworthy dream? Nina finally broke the stillness, her face lit with pride. Emily, this is incredible. You've transformed your struggle into something truly beautiful. It feels relatable and raw. The praise washed over her like a stream of light, illuminating the dark crevices of her doubt. In that moment, a full circle closed around Emily's fears. The woman who had once made her question her worth was now replaced by a friend, reaffirming her value. But just as relief threatened to wash her away, the figure from her past loomed nearer, a familiar gaze cutting through the newfound warmth. It was Jordan, her former classmate, known for delivering biting critiques cloaked in the guise of constructive advice. His presence threatened to fracture her hard-earned confidence. Emily's heart leapt into her throat. How could she continue to embrace this moment with judgment so close? But instead of retreating, she tapped into the reservoir of strength she had cultivated throughout her journey. Jordan, I'm sharing my music today because it matters to me, she said, her voice steady and unwavering. It's about overcoming the fear that once held me back, and I won't let anyone steal that away from me. Surprised at her audacity, Jordan was momentarily speechless. Emily seized the opportunity, holding her head high. It's a part of my journey of discovery, a path I fought to reclaim. I'm ready to embrace whatever comes next. The gaze that met her was different. Jordan's expression softened, perhaps even intrigued. It was then that Emily realized her transformation was not just for herself, but also a chance to redefine old narratives, even those of the people who had marginalized her in the past. Don't shy away from this moment, Nina encouraged, her voice breaking the tension. Let's celebrate. Your voice deserves to be heard. With the weight of expectations and past criticisms dissipating, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of validation. Why had she let fear overshadow her dreams for so long? Today, she was no longer just a mother or a woman wrestling with her aspirations. She was an artist ready to share her voice. The conversation turned lively, filled with laughter, sharing ideas about music, and brainstorming future collaborations. With each exchange, Emily felt the barriers around her heart dismantle further, exposing the fierce, vibrant core of her identity. The song she had penned wasn't just about her. It was a universal anthem of transformation. Before she left, she invited Nina and Jordan to an open mic where she planned to perform soon. "Let's see how far we can take this." Emily smiled, sparking a glimmer of enthusiasm in the eyes of both her companions. As she stepped out of the cafe, a wave of satisfaction crashed over her. She had not only reclaimed her narrative, but had embraced a new chapter of artistic expression. The figure of judgment had turned into an unexpected ally, and with every interaction, Emily's belief in herself solidified. Now she had a tangible goal and a renewed sense of purpose. Her music was a platform not just for her own growth, but also a way to inspire Max and others around her. It was a promise to herself that fear would no longer dictate her choices. That evening, she sat with Max, the ukulele dancing in her hands as they strummed and sang together. "Let's write a song about being brave," she proposed, igniting a spark of creativity in her son. As they created, Emily caught a glimpse of her own potential in that moment, no longer just a flourish of melody, but a profound testament to her journey. Her accomplishments were not merely in the numbers of songs performed, but in the relationships rebuilt, fears conquered, and the legacy she wished to impart to Max. She knew this was just the beginning, a stepping stone toward a future blooming with possibilities. Emily had learned to embrace her voice, chase her dreams, and reclaim the narrative of her life. As she and Max composed, she felt an unshakable sense of accomplishment. She had become an embodiment of bravery, ready to share her story with the world. Fueled by her own transformation, she whispered into the night, "This is my moment." As she looked at Max, his excitement reflected her own, and she realized she had already achieved something monumental, the trust that both she and her son could follow their dreams without fear. Now was the time to reach out into the world and share their journey together. With that thought, Emily felt a wave of exhilaration rush through her. Indeed, the time was right. She was ready to embrace whatever awaited her beyond this beautiful transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.